Thank you for that address, Minister, and thanks for agreeing to answer a few questions. I'm going to pick up on a few of the things you mentioned in your speech. You talked about the vulnerabilities of trade, and unfortunately a lot of producers in Australia and probably a lot of people in this room know just how vulnerable we can be, particularly when it comes to China. You mentioned lobster. There was speculation a couple of months ago that that was imminently about to be lifted in terms of that trade barrier. What's the timeline there? When can we expect an announcement? We thought it would be when the Chinese Premier was visiting, but it seems to have gone silent.
Look, you know, we've worked very hard to get rid of trade impediments, and Don often talks about a figure of, I think it was $20 billion of exports were affected in the year we came to government, and now I think we have less than $1 billion, but lobster is amongst them, and obviously we continue to press. I've raised it a number of times with Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and the Chinese Premier. I know the Prime Minister raised it also with the Chinese Premier. The method we use to try and get the negotiation to get wine and barley out of the impeded class isn't available to us with lobster, so we use World Trade Organisation's sort of negotiation mediation processes and legal processes for those two, and that was the sort of off-ramp. The complaint from the Chinese about lobster was contamination. Obviously, DAF, the Department of Agriculture, is working with the Chinese authorities on this, and will continue to press.
You mentioned,
I know that it, you know, particularly for some, we've had some representations from some South Australians who may be here on lobster, so I know that it's been a real issue for people.
Hopefully we'll get some movement on that one soon. You mentioned wine is back. Obviously that's great news. My family back in WA has a vineyard, so I know it is so heartbreaking to have to pull out vines, and we saw that happening. Can you give producers confidence that that won't happen again, that China might just change its mind and off we go? Because as we know, the variety...
I might not be quite that powerful.
Well, the varieties of wine that China likes, not... You know, it hasn't been that easy to substitute.
Yeah, it is. Look, I've had this conversation with a number of the sort of leaders in the wine industry in the lead up to this. I said, look, you know, I was pretty confident that if we... It was one of those nice occasions. Often, you know, it's not always like this, where you have a plan in opposition, you implement in government, it works in the way you hope. So that was really good. I was pretty confident we could get where we got to on wine. But I did say to people, you know, we really do need to diversify. And I said, look, I know it's easy for me to say that, you know, and industries are built on assumptions about markets and assumptions about preferences, and there isn't another market like China. Right, there isn't. There isn't an easily replaceable market like China. You know, over 1 billion people, rising middle class, that the sort of consumer taste there. But the hard reality of the lesson is that we do need to diversify. And I know that may take time, and I think Peter might have announced previously sort of vine rest programs so people can make those decisions. And different markets will have different consumption kind of preferences. So I'm not at all trying to diminish that this is a hard process, but as in my role, it is my job to say to people, I don't think we should be assuming that one market will always be there for us. We have to be able to diversify, and we did quite well in a number of other sectors through that period of trade impediments, and I think we do need to work on that when it comes to the wine industry.
It's one thing when another government shuts you down, but it's quite another when your own government tries to do it. One of our panellists raised the issue of live sheep exports earlier. I broadcast out of Perth. I've interviewed a lot of farmers about this in recent times.
She's from Western Australia, so I figured I'd get this question.
And it's an issue as well, obviously, in South Australia as well.
Hello, Tony. How are you? Nice to see you.
So
I won't interject on you if you don't interject on me, all right? Thank you.
As you know, livelihoods are at risk here, jobs are at risk here. The conditions on these ships have massively improved in recent years. Why are you pushing ahead with that policy?
We did go to 2 elections with this, Ash. And I know.
I really changed a lot in that time period.
Yeah, I would just say I understand this is a livelihood issue for many people. This is an issue that a lot of people feel really strongly about. I get that, but we've gone to 2 elections now with a commitment to this, and you know, Murray, when he was Minister put in place quite a large adjustment package, and we've indicated a phase out. So we understand it's a big issue. Without getting into the sort of policy of it, I think that it is true that a lot of people are upset about that. It's also true that there are a lot of people in Australia who did support this. So it's one of those very difficult issues. We tried to work our way through it. We delayed it and deferred it and provided an assistance package for the industry. No doubt it will continue to be a political issue. I understand that.
I interviewed the Keep the Sheep boss last week, and they've got $500,000 in the war chest ready to go to the election to fight marginal seats. So it could become a bit of a political headache, but we'll see how that plays out. It's obviously, can be seen as a niche issue in some of those parts of the country.
Oh no, absolutely. I get that there are parts of Australia, and WA particularly, who are very concerned about it. Yeah.
Looking at what's going on, we talked about energy security a bit earlier, and the Premier was talking about the need for energy security at a federal level. As we all know, you back AUKUS wholeheartedly in favour of nuclear submarines, so I'm assuming that there's no issue with nuclear power on a safety ground. Is it only economic grounds that you object to nuclear on? Obviously, with the uranium deposit here, does it make sense to close that loop, produce clean power in Australia, and look at that plan, which would also bring hundreds of jobs to Port Augusta?
Well, 2 points. First, it isn't closed loop. You have to enrich your uranium. So if you wanted to use uranium from Roxby, presumably you either have to build one here or you've got to ship it offshore and then bring it back. But that's a minor issue. It's economic grounds for me, and I was Climate Minister and I looked at it very closely, and things have actually, the price differential has got worse. So the Peter Dutton plan actually is at best 4% of Australia's power by 2040. Maybe 2035. He says 2035. The CSIRO says 2040. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. That's still a long way away. The industry calculates approximately $600 billion. So that's a lot of money for 4% and a long way off. So I don't think it's a good investment. I looked at it when I was Climate Minister, and I said, let's take an agnostic view, right, around nuclear power. So leave aside any of the other issues and just look at the economics, and the economics never stacked up, and they still don't.
So if you take an agnostic view, is there really a need to have a ban on nuclear power in this country in the year 2024?
Well, I just think, the ban has been in place for a long time, but I don't think there's a reason to overturn it to spend $600 billion on 4% of Australia's power when there is that amount of money will sufficiently transition the Australian energy grid and the Australian economy. I mean, we have had an economically irrational argument on energy for years. And from the period I was Climate Minister, we've seen, I think, irrational economics. All that happened under the coalition for 9 years was baseload power exited the grid, and no one invested to put more into the grid. Now, I believe in markets. The weird thing is, I might be a Labor person, but I actually think market signals are a pretty good thing. And because of the dispute inside the coalition and the 22 energy plans, obviously the private sector said, well, we're not investing because we don't know what the policy framework is. So you know what we had? We had baseload power exiting. And we are trying to deal with that. And, I wish that it had not been the way, and I wish we could be further ahead on the transition, because I think we're all paying the price and consumers are paying the price. But I don't think another plan, which would be the 23rd from the coalition at $600 billion for 4%, is a smart thing to do. What I would say is you see here in South Australia the benefit of a government actually giving some policy certainty. And, sorry.
I was going to say, we are running out of time, but on that energy transition, would you agree that gas, obviously the business of our biggest company, Santos, that is critical to that transition?
Yeah, this is why we get caught between the rhetoric on the Conservative side and then the Greens side as well. I mean, the point we continue to make is gas has a place. Like, we need gas for firming of renewables, we need gas in industrial processes, and gas will continue to be a part of people's domestic consumption in their homes. So you have to continue to have that, just as you need to continue to invest in renewables. But can I make a broader point about transition? Would that be all right?
Please.
Thank you. No, this is, for me it comes down to what sort of the energy part is one piece of the broader transition in the global economy, and what sort of opportunities do I want for my two daughters, right? And we have done incredibly well as a country because of the resources we have, and that's a great thing. It's been great for our economy, it's been great for, we've built infrastructure, we've built a world-class education system, we've got a decent system of Medicare, we've got a decent system of social security, you know, we have good universities, etc. And a lot of that has been funded because we have been able to export coal, iron ore, you know, we are resources rich. We have to work out how we make money in a world that is moving to net zero. 84% of the world's economy is signed up to net zero. I want us to be able to be part of that and recognise that that change is happening. It is, you know, I've been in Japan, I've been in Korea. I know they are major export markets. I know what they're asking for. We need to be part of that. Means we've got to take, you know, we've got to change, work towards ensuring what we sell to the world will be as valuable in that decade and beyond as it is now.
Prime Minister Penny Wong, thank you for your
Great
time.
to be with you.
Thank you for joining us
Thanks
here
for
at the
having
Bush
me.
Summit today.